Good evening and welcome back to the show. We're so glad to have you back with us. And as always, we have outstanding guests that's going to be providing a lot of good information for you. So as I ask every show, be sure you have pencil and paper, write down this information. You're not going to remember everything that was said, but it's so important that you be able to at least call in and talk to the guests to follow up on any questions that you might have. For the first part of the show, I'm going to say the first two sessions. For my guests, I have Fern Gadsden Rush. She's from Nye County School District, and she is the Grant Site Parent Engagement Representative. Now that's a mouthful right there. So we're going to have to talk to Fern and find out exactly what it is she does, how long she's been there, and just give us some of her background so you know who it is that's giving you this invaluable information. Fern, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, native Californian, been around the world, ended up here in Pahrump, looking to do educational work. I started out here as a substitute teacher, and then I became the parent liaison for Floyd Elementary School. And I really enjoy working with the parents, so that was right up my alley. Did that for about a year, year and a half, and now I'm at the district level, and I'm still working with the parents, and I'm the, as you said, the grant site parent engagement representative. It's a mouthful, but that's what I do. And basically, my job is to make sure that parents know that they are more than welcome to be involved in their students' educational journeys.
Now this is fantastic. But one of the things I want to ask is everybody wants to know, how did you find your way to Pahrump?
Everybody asks me that. I was living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and just about to go into COPD because of the air quality. And I have relatives still at California Desert, here in the desert. So I've been here before on several trips, and I thought, that might be an interesting place to live. And I moved out here, and I just fell in love with Pahrump. And I remember the night I fell in love with it. I was on, I believe, West Street, the street that goes up like this and stops at Highway 372, just as the sun went down. And I watched Pahrump go to sleep, and I was like, I was
That's
hooked.
beautiful. That's
I
a
was hooked.
beautiful story. Okay. So now again, tell us how long you've been with the school district?
I've been with the school district since December of 2018. So it's going on 2 full years, I believe.
And it sounds like you really enjoy it. As the grant site parent engagement representative, what is family engagement? What is it all about?
And that's a good question. Family engagement is the shared responsibility between schools, families, and communities where everybody receives equitable access to tools and supports needed to work together toward the development of children and youth for college, career, and lifelong learning. And since parents are children's first and most important teachers, they are essential partners to the success of Nevada schools. Partnerships between schools, families, and community members, it's scientifically based evidence shows that it improves student performance and makes schools stronger.
I have to ask the question. You know, I was trying to get the superintendent, Dale Norton, on the show for a long time. Meeting conflicts and travel conflicts, we just had a lot of difficulty. But he said to me, he said, look, I have a person that I think you'd really like to have on your show. Very informative and going to provide a lot of information for our parents. Is it okay if she appears on the show? And I said, of course. You know, they're going to be representing the superintendent and the Nye County School District, so yes, I want that person on the show. I didn't know who Fern was at the time, had not met her, and we were at a place. We both had our tables, our booths out, and providing information to the public. And she came over and introduced herself and told me that she was the person who was going to be on the show. Just from observing her in that one location, I knew this was going to be a fantastic show. She's got a lot of information, and when we talk about the grant site parent engagement representative, she's representing something that's so important as she's discussed it. She's letting parents know just how important it is to be engaged in the education of their child. And she's the person to contact if you have any problems or anything, any questions. And we want to put her phone number back on the screen so you can make sure that you can contact her anytime because of the things that we're talking about tonight. So again, I'm going to go back, and we've talked about what family engagement is, but Fern, is there anything else you want to say about family engagement?
Yes. One of the reasons you should call me is because we have access to resources that we will gladly share with you. For instance, we have a tool that's on the Department of Education's website, and it's called Getting Started. You are your child's best advocate. It's a tool that was created by the National PTA, and it offers guidance for families, and it includes information on special education, student success, college and career readiness. And a lot of parents say to me, we don't have anything that prepares our students, our graduates for college. Well, there is a tool available that can help you with that. And there's another tool, Talk with Teachers to Resolve Problems. This is from the U.S. Department of Education, and it provides suggestions on what to ask if parents have concerns about homework or when parents feel they are not able to provide enough help at home to actively assist their students. So those are just a couple of things, and there's a plethora, there's plenty of information and tools that we can provide for you. So please write down the number and my extension and call me. I would be more than happy to help.
You know, when we have somebody available to talk to parents to keep them informed of what they can do for their children, I think it is so important. But why is it important for parents to collaborate with schools?
Well, evidence-based research shows that healthy, successful children can excel in many areas. In the classroom, when they're out at play, making friends, and in relationships with peers and adults. Now, this is important because, as we all know, we started out as children and we grew into adults. And along that way, we learned relationship rules, behaviors, and we also, a lot of us, passed through that phase perfectly. And there are some of us that struggle with that. And evidence-based research shows if parents are involved, students are more confident, they're less of a disciplinary problem, they're more interested in their schoolwork, and it opens up an area so that parents and students can converse about homework. Parents feel comfortable when they go to parent-teachers conferences because they'll be able to know, okay, these are the questions I need to ask in order to help my student. So it's an all-around healthy situation for all of us if parents are involved so that we can all be there for the students. It's about the kiddos. It's about your kiddos.
And that is so important to remember. It's all about the kids. Now, when I look at this, I'm looking at the fact that we have teachers, and parents like to call their teachers. What's the difference, and why would you put an emphasis on calling you instead of calling the child's teacher?
For clarity, yes. Call your student's teacher. What I'm asking you to do when I say call me is to find out what are the things you can do to become an active partner in your child's school. So I know that there are some parents who come in and they'll volunteer for the school. They'll come into a classroom for a couple of hours a week or a day. And there are other things that are important for parents to understand. So NBC did a poll, and they said that 51% of parents say that they spend more time with their children than their parents spent with them. 75% of those people, those parents, said they highly rate their children's education, and 86% state that their child will need more than a high school education to have a successful life. Those are great statistics and they sound good for us, but we've got a lot of work ahead of us. And it's my job to make sure that parents are equipped to go into the schools, to be an assistant either in the front office or in the classroom, on the playground, in the lunchroom. We really want to make sure that parents know it's good to be involved. Being involved is what parent engagement is about. And I want to add that it's not just parents. It's important to know that families can consist of aunts and uncles, older siblings, foster and adoptive parents, as well as grandparents. In short, anyone with custodial care of a student is considered family.
I like the fact that you brought that in to talk about the entire family and not necessarily just parents. It is so important to get the entire family involved in the education of the child. Otherwise, you're really beating your head against the wall trying to get kids interested in education. But if they see that their families are interested, it's so easy for children to be interested, whether it's reading, writing, and all the other things that children need to know. In the educational systems that I've been involved with, I've seen the need for exactly what it is you're providing, ensuring that parents are there, family members are there, and everybody is there working for the support of the education of that child. It is so important, and I want you to come back because we have more information for you with Fern. Welcome back. We're so glad to have you back with us, and I want to remind you who our guest is. Our guest is from the Nye County School District. She's Fern Gadsden-Rush, and she is the Grant Site Parent Engagement Representative. So when you think about that, and you think about talking to people at the school, getting engaged and involved in everything for your child, this is the person you need to call just to make sure that what else is available, how else can I help my child in the educational endeavors that they're going to be going through. I know I'm talking to the teachers, I'm getting more and more specific information from that particular class, but overall, what can you do to help me be more involved with my child? And that's what she does. So let's turn it back over to Vern, because when we look at, well, I want her to give me an example of an important element of family engagement. This is the family, not just the parent, because she already talked about what the family is. Aunts, uncles, cousins, anybody involved with that child is part of the family. So family engagement, Vern, tell us about that.
So one really important element of family engagement is being able to show your child how to understand the concepts of what they're learning. So let's take math. We start by learning to count, which leads us to addition and subtraction, which then leads us to multiplication and division, and so on. A lot of parents that I've spoken to say, oh, my kid hates math, and they say, I don't understand why I have to do math. Well, one of the things that parents can learn about is being able to guide and direct their child when they're doing their homework. So one of the things they can do, and keep in mind, you're at home. This is informal. So you can do things like, you can explain to them that addition and subtraction, multiplication and division will help you when you get a job. You can figure out how much money you'll earn an hour, how much money you'll earn every couple of weeks. You'll learn how to budget because the money you get, you have to pay bills with, you have to buy clothing, you have to pay bills, and if you have children, that sort of it is added exponentially, right? So you need to know how to handle your money. That's why you do math, basic math. You want to be an architect? Now you're looking at geometry and things like that. Basically, my job is to help parents get into a position from which they can show their child the building blocks of what they're learning. And it doesn't matter which subject it is. I just chose math because it was an easy way for me to describe the building blocks. So the schools, your students' schools, do things like Literacy Night, which is about learning to read. Learning to read is important, I'll tell you why. We learn our ABCs. We learn to read, but at a certain point in time, we begin reading to learn. What that means is the teacher, as you get older, your teacher's going to give you homework assignments. You're going to have to take those books home. Your students will take those books home and read the assignment and then answer questions. When they're reading those assignments, they're reading to learn. And if a student doesn't make that transition, the chances are they're not going to want to finish school when they're 16, 17, 18 years old because they've fallen so far behind the other students. So there are so many different things that you can do as parents, and come and talk to me and we'll explore what your options will be. Your teachers will do the same with you. We're all here to offer you tools to help your student progress and be successful.
Fern, now you said earlier that the parents are the children's first and most important teachers.
That's correct.
When should parents start getting involved in their students' education? And already you've identified family as not just parents, but family can be anybody that's associating with the child. So
Right.
when should they first get involved with this?
That's a good question. School has changed since I was a kid. Now, coming into kindergarten, you need to know your letters, you need to know the alphabet, you need to know your numbers up to a certain point. You need to know how to use a pencil and paper. So as soon as your child starts showing interest in learning, for instance, writing their names or tying their shoes, that is when you know, okay, I need to start really getting involved in this. Because it's important for your student to know that you're there and that you can help them. I had one situation where I had parents, we were having a meeting, and one parent said, I can't help my student with his math. I don't understand the math. Well, one of the tools I have available is a homework dictionary. I gave him that dictionary. He went right to the math. He started reading, and all of a sudden he said, hey, I understand it now. And I've run into that family a few times, and that student is doing well. He's doing well because the parents were concerned enough that they took the time to come and find out what tools were available. Really, please call me. Please call me. Please come and see me. Tell me what your situation is, and I will try to help you as best I can to find tools, or at least direct you to where you can find those tools.
You know, with the education of today, as you've already stated, sometimes parents do find it difficult. But at the same time, if parents start reading to their child at an early age, reading bedtime stories, then children are interested in reading. Math is the same thing. you want to start with basic math. You don't want to go into algebra or geometry at a young age, but you want to start with basic math so they understand counting,
Right.
counting of pennies and dimes and quarters. And so children understand that. And they have appreciation of math. If they get in school and find it's difficult, then they decide that's not something I'm interested in. But if they find that they're successful, and we want our children to be successful, and if they are, they're more apt to be interested in that particular subject. And they sometimes will also come back and teach us, the parents. Look,
Right.
this is something I learned in school.
Right.
It may be beyond us at that time, but to sit down and listen to your child after they've learned something, it is so important. And it shows them that you're interested. So when we look at that, it's just a crucial part of their educational process. So Fern, when we look at what else do parents need to know about family engagement?
They need to know that we are really invested in trying to help them collaborate with us to make their students' educational journey enjoyable, sustainable, and successful. They need to know that we, like anyone who has not already become a partner with their students' schools but would like to call us and ask to become a partner. And we look forward to helping them. Now, I want to touch a little bit on something you said, where you said something about helping your child with homework shows that you're interested. Talking to your child's teacher, helping in the school on any level, is showing your child that you're not only interested, but invested in their success. And I know education has changed so much, and the way things are taught has changed as well. But believe me, you can go to the teacher and say, I don't understand this. Or you can come to me and say, I'm not really sure how to deal with this. And we'll figure out some way to help you get there. Your child is going to appreciate the effort you're putting in, because nobody wants to do something that no one is interested in. Everybody wants to be acknowledged. And the fact that you can sit down and learn with your child or help your child learn, that boosts the energy and the ego and the attitude of the student enough so that they will eventually become successful. You're their first and best teacher, and they're going to be looking to you. You also mentioned reading to a child when they're young. I know parents who have read to their children when they're in the womb. And those children come out and they love to read and they love to be read to. So I guess my answer to that question you asked me is it's never too early. Start as soon as you want to. But if you start, please try to continue. Try to be consistent. Come talk to me. Let's talk. I'm here. We're here. And we are devoted and invested in making sure you can become involved if that's what you want to do.
You know, it is so important when I hear that, because I know a lot of parents are going to be watching this and they're going to be saying, okay, now what can I do to help my child in this particular situation? I've talked to the teachers, and now I have another asset that I can go to. I have a phone number. I have a person I can call. It is so important that Fern Gadsden Rush be called. Let her know, look, this is something, I just need help in this particular area. When we look at the grant site parent engagement representative, we don't want her sitting there with nothing to do. So parents, give her a call. Find out what it's all about and come out and help your child be the success that you'd want them to be. You can always tell them, once they graduate from, I'll say 8th grade, and then from high school, and then from college, they're being successful, but they can only be successful if they've got the basics, the basic education, And that's where it starts. And it starts with parents and families helping the child get to where they need to get. And that's what it's all about. Fern, any last second things you want to say?
I just want to say we can be reached at 775-727-7743, and my extension is 274.
Thank you. Goodbye. Welcome back. We're so glad to have you back with us. And I have my second guest for this evening. And my second guest is Terry Janke. We were also supposed to have Victoria Brazel, but she sent Terry to represent the family. I thought that was great, but I wanted to mention her name anyway. And Terry Janke is the guest. And those of you who have heard the name Terry Janke, you know he's the commander of the DAV, Chapter 15, here in Pahrump. And he's also working with the Battle-Born Quilts of Valor. For those who have not received quilt from either Quilts of Valor, if you're a veteran or if you know a veteran that has not received their quilt, be sure to contact Quilts of Valor and sign them up for a quilt. Now, we have the Battle-Born Quilts of Valor, and there's a slight difference, and we're going to let Terry tell us all about some of that. But first of all, Terry, tell us about your background, tell us some other things. What's going on with you?
Well, after 13 years in the military, I returned to my home state of Ohio and worked in the Veterans Program there for about 16 years. Retired in 2010 with the sole intent of continuing my work with veterans. And I'd fallen in love with the Pahrump area while visiting years before. And after riding around Pahrump and seeing all the veterans' license plates, I said, this is a place that I could live, and I moved here.
Well, we're glad you're here. We definitely are, because you've done so much in our community and so much for our community. And again, we definitely appreciate all of your efforts. Now, I know you worked with the Quilts of Valor, and that has been, tell us about the Quilts of Valor first.
Any conversation about Battle-Born Quilts of Valor really has to start with the Quilts of Valor Foundation. The Quilts of Valor Foundation actually was developed or came out of a dream. The original Quilt of Valor, the very first one, was made by Catherine Roberts back in 2003. And Catherine had a son who was deployed at the time in Iraq. And she had a dream of a veteran or of a soldier sitting on his bunk, kind of cold and desolate, and was thinking, wouldn't it be great if this person had a quilt to warm and comfort them? And she made the very first Quilt of Valor in 2003, and since then, over 250,000 Quilts of Valor have been awarded to veterans and active duty personnel here in the United States.
You know, that's truly outstanding when you think about the numbers of quilts. And here in Pahrump, I know we've had several ceremonies where quilts have been issued to the different veterans, and it's always, I'm going to say, a tear-jerking ceremony, because as much as I hate to admit it, no, I don't know everything. That I'll admit. But I thought for sure that when they had the quilts, they would just come out and hand the veteran their quilt. The fact that they have a ceremony to wrap that veteran in the quilt, and then the ladies and men, in some cases, that help prepare the quilt, they are the ones that wrap that veteran in that quilt. It is such an inspirational time. I know for me, it's a time I'll never forget, and I'm very, very proud of the quilt that I received. So for all those veterans out there, and for all those families that know some veterans that may have not received their quilts, be sure to get their names turned in. Terry, tell them, how can they get their names turned in to receive a quilt?
They can either contact me, or they can go to www.QOVF, that's Quilts of Valor Foundation, and put in an application online. Those applications then are sent out to a local quilt group, wherever the veteran or active duty person lives, and the ceremony is set up from there.
How many different ceremonies have we had in the Pahrump area that you're aware of?
Oh my goodness! I know that there are two groups here in Pahrump. One does 3 large ceremonies a year, 30 to 35 people at each ceremony. Battleborn does smaller ceremonies, and in our first 5 months, Battleborn Quilts of Valor awarded 60 quilts. These quilts were awarded not in a large ceremony, because that is not the veteran population that we're aiming for. We have made presentations in people's homes with nothing more than the veteran, his wife, and a dog in present. We've done awards at the bowling alley. We've done awards at a rock club meeting. We specialize in doing the one-on-one and small, more intimate ceremonies. So in our first 5 months, we did 60, and then COVID-19 hit, and we were forced to cease making presentations. We just recently were authorized again by the Quilts of Valor Foundation to resume awarding quilts. And we can do so, of course, following the Governor Sisolak's edicts on presentations or on gatherings, and following the CDC guidelines. So I'm in the process right now of connecting, or trying to connect with all of those quilt awardees that have been waiting for months now to get those quilts.
Now, I want to use the next session to talk about the Battleborn Quilts of Valor. I'd like to stick with as much as we can with just the Quilts of Valor during this session, because the quilts are valuable. Can you tell me about how much each quilt costs?
There's quilts are, you know, they're not mass produced. This is not the quilt you go to the store and buy, where it's put in a machine and sew a couple pieces of fabric are sewn together. Quilts consist of 3 parts. There's a top, there's a batting or a center, and then there's a backing. The fabric alone costs at least $200. The time to put these quilts together can be anywhere from 10 hours to 40 hours, depending on how intricate the design is. The quilt, each quilt is unique. Each quilt is developed in the mind of the person who puts it together. There may be 40, 50, 70 different pieces just on the top alone that have all got to be cut from large pieces of fabric, sewn together, and then put with the backing and the batting in the center. And that then goes to a quilter who has a very large machine. My wife's machine is 15 foot long and 5 foot wide, to do the actual quilting of the top and the quilt. It's really a time-consuming and an expensive process for the quilter and the long armor.
So, looking at the expense that it costs to prepare the quilt, to put the quilt together, and the time it takes, time is valuable for all the quilters. So how much does it cost for the veteran to receive the quilt?
There's no cost to the veteran whatsoever. These quilts are all done by volunteers. In many cases, in most cases, the volunteers use their own funds and their own time to make the quilt and award the quilt. There is never any cost to a veteran, and in fact, we are forbidden by the Quilts of Valor Foundation to even ask for donations when we're making an award of a quilt.
How about donations from the public just to support the overall effort? Is that something that can be done?
Donations can be made to the Quilts of Valor Foundation, or can be made to a specific group. And if anybody has any questions about how to do that, or they feel free to contact me, and I'll gladly give them all the information they need and point them in the right direction.
Okay, I like to say that again, because when we talk about donations, if you feel that you'd like to help the Quilts of Valor or Battle-Born Quilts of Valor to continue to provide quilts to veterans, and you'd like to make a contribution, feel free to contact Terry Janke and let him know, look, I'd like to make a donation. I'd like to help out. I'd like to be a part of this. And even for those veterans who have received quilts, like I have, I'd like other veterans to receive one as well. So not paying for my quilt, I couldn't do that. But at the same time, to help somebody else get a quilt, it's something I'd like to do. So I'm going to encourage everybody to write a check. But before you fill out the check, and not so much the amount, but who to send it to, contact Terry and let him know, look, I'm interested in making a donation. And that way you can make sure all the information is correct and you're ready to go. But Quilts of Valor and Battle-Born Quilts of Valor, very important organizations in our community. Terry, what else do we have on that?
The Quilts of Valor Foundation, once again, is run by volunteers, and donations are always welcome. Donations, like I said, can come to me, or just contact me, and I can, if you want to make a donation on behalf of another group, that's fine. I'll make sure I give you that information. It's just so important. It's so important what we do, and it's so valuable to the veterans who receive these quilts, and anybody who's willing to help. If you want to become a quilter in a group, contact me, and I can put you in contact with the closest group to you, and you can help by making quilts yourself.
You know, we have again with Terry Janke. He is the commander of the DAV Chapter 15 here in Pahrump, Nevada. He is the State of Nevada Coordinator of Quilts of Valor. He is I'm going to say, the coordinator also for the Battle-Born Quilts of Valor that we're going to talk about in the next session. There's so many things that Terry is doing, and he's doing for our community. But you just can't say enough about the things that he's done. But come back and join us in the next session. Welcome back. We're so glad to have you back with us for this final session. And my guest for this final session is Terry Janke. He is the commander of DAV Chapter 15 here in Pahrump, Nevada. And he's also the person responsible for the Battle-Born Quilts of Valor. Last session, we talked about the Quilts of Valor, and we gave you a lot of information. And again, if you have any questions about anything with Quilts of Valor, you can always call Terry, and he'll provide the information for you. Whether you want to donate so they can continue their work, or if you need a quilt for a veteran, just go ahead and contact him, and he'll guide you in the right direction. He is, this session, I'd like to talk about the Battle-Born Quilts of Valor. They're different from the regular Quilts of Valor, but we need to ask Terry why they have the Quilts of Valor, or Battle-Born Quilts of Valor, why they started it when we have the regular Quilts of Valor. So Terry, tell us, why the difference, why the exception?
I got my Quilt of Valor about 3 years ago, and I can remember it was a part of a large ceremony. And it, as you have mentioned, they can be very intense. They can be very emotional. And I know that when I got my quilt, they asked me if I wanted to say a few words, and I was too choked up. I couldn't even say anything. So I just declined. And got together with some other like-minded quilters. I am myself not a quilter, thank God. I don't have the expertise or the patience to put together a quilt and do what they have to do. My wife Victoria, of course, has been a quilter and owner of the Quilted Dragon quilt shop here for 21 years. So we talked with a few friends and few fellow quilters, and we said, you know, there's a large population out there of veterans who are not interested in having a large ceremony. So we came up with a mission statement, and I'll read that. Battle-Born Quilts of Valor was established to serve those who are physically, emotionally, geographically unable to and or choose not to participate in a large award ceremony. We thought we can pick up those and we can award quilts to those veterans who may have PTSD and don't want to be in a crowd, who may be physically unable to make it to a large ceremony. We have, since our inception, we have not did not form this group to compete with anybody, but to augment, and not just here in Pahrump or Nye County, but through the entire state of Nevada. I mentioned earlier there are 5 quilt groups, Quilts of Valor groups in the state, and it's a pretty large state. So there's a lot of rural areas that are not covered or don't have a Quilt of Valor group nearby. So we're willing to go anywhere in the state we have to go to do a one-on-one ceremony. As I've mentioned, we'll do ceremonies, award ceremonies in an individual's home. We'll do it at the bowling alley. We'll do whatever is most convenient for the veteran and what fits his or her needs and wants. As I said, we will go to the hospital. We've done a couple of hospice awards, and a lot of veterans just can't wait. Tom and I are both Vietnam veterans, and we're getting up in years, and a lot of our brothers and sisters from Vietnam deserve to have a Quilt of Valor, but so many of them can't come to a big ceremony or are physically or emotionally unable to come to a big ceremony. So that's what the reason behind Battle-Born Quilts of Valor, to serve that unserved population.
You know, just listening to you and looking at the quilts that you've presented, I always ask the question of how many veterans or which veterans should receive a quilt? You're looking at just wartime veterans, or talking about just those who were wounded, or which veterans are you saying should receive a quilt?
It's funny you should ask that, because Quilts of Valor Foundation has been agonizing over the term touched by war, and just recently has come out with new guidance. I myself had some discerning feelings about touched by war, meaning somebody who was in actual combat. You don't have to be in actual combat to be touched by war. You could work in the hospital, you could work in personnel, you can anytime, you can work with any veteran who's been in the field, and you are touched by war. So basically what we're saying now in the Quilts of Valor is, if you were in the military and were honorably discharged, anytime after 1941, you're eligible for a Quilt of Valor, and you deserve it. You've earned it, you worked for it, you took the same oath that everybody takes in the military. It's not up to you once you take that oath where you're going to end up. So you may end up in the field in actual combat, or you may be a medic working with those wounded, or you could be the person in personnel that's working with somebody that's being discharged because they have PTSD. You were touched by war, and that's why you're eligible for and deserve a Quilt of Valor.
I am so glad to hear that, because I've had several people say, well, you know, I didn't go overseas. I don't think I deserve a quilt. And I'm saying if you wore the uniform of the United States of America in any branch of service, you deserve a quilt. You've earned it. And we have these volunteers here that are willing to make sure you receive one. But you have to step forward and let them know that, yes, I'm willing to accept a quilt. And if I'm going to say that for myself, I would never have requested a quilt. My wife requested it for me, but once I found out that she had submitted my name, I accepted it. And so if you have a family member that's a veteran that you would like them to receive a quilt, it will do them good to receive their quilt. Very emotional. As Terry was saying, as I said earlier, the ceremonies themselves are emotional, but just to receive your quilt, even if it's done by the Battle-Born Quilts of Valor in the privacy of your own home or at your selected location, it's still emotional. It's something that somebody wants to do because you've served your country. I think it is so important. So you've seen pictures of what some of the quilts look like. They're all different. There are no two quilts that are the same. And a quilt is made for a particular person. So when you receive your quilt, you can say, this is my own personal quilt. I'm proud to show mine whenever I have visitors in my home. It's something that I'm very proud of, and I'll be forever grateful to the Quilts of Valor. And then when I heard about the Battle-Born Quilts of Valor, because there were so many that were in hospitals or in nursing homes that weren't able to come out. And Terry and the Battle-Born Quilts of Valor are willing to go wherever you are in the state of Nevada and make sure you receive your quilt. So Terry, what else can you tell me about the Battle-Born Quilts of Valor?
We're a small group. We have about 20 members, 19 of which are quilters and me. They are all such dedicated and so wonderful. They're great people. I just can't idolize them enough. They spend their time, their money, their efforts to make these quilts. And if I could, I'd like to read something from the Quilts of Valor Foundation's award ceremony that talks about the quilt, how it's made. So if you bear with me while I read this. A quilt consists of 3 layers. We think of them this way. The top of the quilt with its many colors, shapes, and fabrics represents the communities and the many individuals within. The batting or filler is the center of the quilt, with its warmth representing our hope that this quilt will bring warmth, comfort, peace, and healing to the individual who receives it. The backing is the strength that supports the other layers. It represents the strength of the recipient, the support of his or her family, our communities, and our nation. Each stitch that holds the layers together and the binding that goes around the quilt represents the love, gratitude, hugs, and sometimes the tears of the maker. Forgive me, I always get upset when I read that.
I can imagine. It's tearful. I'm getting goosebumps just listening to it. And like I said, as I went through the ceremony and received my quilt, I understand exactly what the feelings are. It is so important that every veteran receives a quilt. That's what the Quilts of Valor and Battle-Born Quilts of Valor is all about. So again, contact Terry if you have any request or any information or you just want more information about the Quilts of Valor or Battle-Born Quilts of Valor, or if you'd like to make a donation so that these organizations can continue to make quilts for veterans. Again, it's something I think it's needed, a healing of all veterans that whether they've seen war or not, they put on the uniform, they served, honorably discharged, and that's what it's all about. Terry, any final comments?
I want to thank you for letting me talk to the people tonight and to talk about Quilts of Valor, Battle-Born Quilts of Valor. And you don't have to be a veteran to put somebody in. You don't have to be a family member, friend, family member, whatever. If you know a veteran or an active duty member of the military who you want to put in for a quilt, please contact me or go to Quilts of Valor Foundation website, www.qovf.org, and you can put in an application there.
Thank you, Terry, for being here tonight. And I also want to thank my earlier guest, Fern Gatson-Rush. She was here from Nye County School District. She was the grant site parent engagement representative and told us a lot about that. But I want to remind you that I have guests every month to bring invaluable information to you. So come back and join us next month. Thank you.